Your author for the evening. I am signing Warbreaker tonight. So these will be bound into the leatherbound of Warbreaker. Theoretically, we're going to finish the last of these tonight, send them off so that we'll have them back in stock in the store. But that will depend on me. How are we looking? We live?
People are talking to us. I just can you let us know where you're talking from? I see Facebook, but it's not showing. Oh, let me do this.
YouTube is offline. Or maybe not. I was going to say Facebook.
Says that we're live.
So,
unless it didn't go to the right place with the link that or the event that I created, that would be
totally possible.
That would be a shame. Let me pull it up. How about I give you a question?
Why don't you give me a question?
So this one is from Marcus. He says, I'm really curious about how the Allomancy would be represented in a Mistborn adaptation. While you're writing the screenplay, have you already planned something? And is the screenplay still a project because your progress bar has been removed and I got kind of confused?
Yeah, I took the screenplay off of the progress bar just because I'm not actively writing it right now because I have the novella to do. I thought I might be getting to it in July, but it doesn't look like it will. All the progress on the screenplay so far that you see is me writing the treatment, not the actual screenplay. And the treatment is like a big fancy outline for a screenplay. And in the treatment, what I have right now is that we represent Allomancy with steel pushing and iron pulling is going to... The thing that the Allomancer is pushing on is going to flash blue on the screen, and you'll see a little line from them to the thing. You won't see all of the lines, most likely. There might be a scene where we show it all once or twice, but mostly it's like Allomancer, line to the blue thing, and then zip, off they go. This is going to really depend on things like people who actually know how to do effects on film telling me if it's going to work or not, but it sounds good so far. Doing things like a burning pewter, I'm using the same sort of blue sort of feeling. With that, I'm sending a ripple of blue lines, almost more like little lightning or veins up the person's arms or body, wherever they're increasing their strength, so to speak. I mean, it does it for all of you, but visually to draw attention like that. The one that's still iffy is emotional allomancy, which in the treatment right now, I say when someone has been affected by emotional allomancy, we show their eyes flash blue for just a second. The trick is this can't be diegetic. It can't be something that's actually happening in world because it would be too much of a tell that someone is having emotional allomancy. So I don't know if it is okay to go with something that's just a symbol for the viewer to know that it's happening, or if that is just too confusing and people will be like, why didn't he see that her eyes flashed blue, or things like that. So this is going to come down to, like, my plan is still to write the first draft of the screenplay, but to work with an established screenwriter thereafter to make it actually good. And this will depend on the established screenwriter that I work with and who ends up being the director on the project, right? Like, there's a lot of people that we're talking to that would be interested, and it also depends on if it ends up live action or animated, right? Animation is not off the table, even though I really would like to do live action, just because I think that our chances of doing Stormlight live action are much lower, and our chances of doing something animated are much higher, just because Stormlight's got many weird things going on, right? With the spread and the storyline being such that it is, but a lot of things are up in the air with all of this. The only thing I've decided right now is that I'm tired of optioning it and then waiting to see what happens, and then maybe getting a screenplay that's okay, or maybe not getting a screenplay at all. Basically, from now on, whoever I work with has to be working more closely with me. I think that I have achieved prominence enough in my field that I can just say no to people more easily and not have to roll the dice quite so much. So we'll see if that works out or not.
Haley is wondering if you can do the Bridge 4 salute for them.
So Bridge 4 is this. Though Wakanda Forever has kind of taken a bit of that. I don't know if we would do it the same way in Cinematic, but I do mean it like this. It's kind of out in front like that, not to the chest. So it might be different enough, but it's totally possible that if we do a cinematic adaptation, they're like, no, that is too much Wakanda. We will go a different direction. But anyway, that's the Bridge 4 salute. You tap right like that.
Stephanie is wondering if you can talk or give suggestions on how to add main characters. They've been working on their first book, and the bulk of the story is focused on 2 other characters. But they're a third to half of the way through the outline, and they haven't started writing the other viewpoint because they were thinking about finishing the other viewpoints first. They're just looking for advice.
So advice on... I find that this is an interesting thing to do both ways, right? Meaning, some books, I write them all chronologically. Some books, I split it up by viewpoint, and they are different talents, and you gain different things. What you're talking about, writing straight through a couple of viewpoints, then going back to the beginning and writing another viewpoint, what your advantage is, you can usually keep a character arc a little more strongly in your head and have it work a little better in first drafts because you're focused only on that character and getting down their story. Where your problem is going to be is pacing. So your natural instinct as a writer, which the more you write, the more you develop, will be to pace each sequence so that it has lulls and fast parts and reveals and things like this to work kind of on its own. Then when you shuffle them together and add in the other viewpoints, what's going to happen is that pacing is just going to go out the window because suddenly you have 3 chapters of action in a row when you had planned it to be action, respond to the action, then more action, and your pacing is just kind of going to be all over the place, and you'll have to work with that in your revision instead by maybe moving chapters around or moving parts. Like in Rhythm of War, there were several times where I had to take chapters that I'd written to take place later in a character's sequence and be like, this needs to happen here for pacing reasons, and we would just move it and I have to rewrite so that conversation happens at a different point in the narrative. My suggestion is just be aware of that being a problem, that once you shuffle them back together, you're going to want to pay a lot of close attention to that. The only way I've found to mitigate that is to plan out in even more detail where the various different scenes for various characters are going to go so that you can kind of have in mind what the chapters around the one you're writing will be. But it's really tough. But again, you do get advantages. It feels like the character arcs come across way more solidly in your first draft if you do it this way. Both of them just will require revision just on different things.
A related question to the one before, talking about adaptations. Someone's wondering if you've given any thought to who you'd want to voice Nightblood.
I have not given thought to who I want to voice Nightblood. I haven't cast a lot of people, right? I just don't do that, in part because it takes so long to get one of these things made that people you may have wanted to cast have, either grown up, moved on, done a character too similar to what you have and things like that. And so there are very few people that in my head I cast, and I haven't Nightblood. Nightblood is going to be a tough one because Nightblood... everyone interprets Nightblood a little differently when they hear Nightblood's voice in their mind, right? And so that's going to be hard to convey, and I don't know if we'll be able to convey it. There are some things that are just going to be, difficult to convey on screen. And some things we'll just have to accept, right? Like, if we did a live-action Stormlight adaptation... we would likely cast Asian characters in a lot of the leads, which is close to what we can get for Alethi, as I imagine in my head. But, the skin tone that we put for a lot of the Alethi characters is darker than a lot of Asian people's skin tone. And so we would just have to say, you know what? We're going to use Asian characters because that's close, because Alethi don't exist in ours. But I could also see us casting some Middle Eastern characters. Like it's going to be all of this stuff when we go to screen is going to be a challenge. Which I hear a lot of you saying, just do it animated, which is why that is still an option.
Robert has a question, trying to keep it spoiler-free.
Yes.
They say, what challenges did you encounter for writing point of views for dead characters in this book, Rhythm of War? What non-spoilery things did you learn from these challenges that you can apply for future Stormlight books?
Yeah, so one of the biggest challenges, it doesn't even have to deal with the viewpoints for characters that have passed away or things like that, is that oh boy, how can I do this without spoiling it for people? It is very challenging to keep tension and drama in scenes for which readers already know end results. This is the prequel dilemma, right? Going back and writing a prequel always has this issue that people know the ultimate end, and that some ways ruins some of the buy-in. But at the same time, we don't have that problem, for instance, Titanic, right? Titanic is one of the most successful films of all time. It not only, the ending is spoiled, not only that, but it is told with a frame story in flashback. So you even know specifically what happens to some of the characters, at least one of them, in the story that they're telling. And screenwriter and director were able to craft that in a way to preserve tension and to build tension toward the things you don't know. And this is kind of, sometimes we call this the difference between mystery and suspense, though that's not a strict definition, where mystery is what's going to happen, and suspense is you anticipating what's going to happen, you know it's coming, and it kind of driving you to anxiety as you anticipate it coming. And so you just have to kind of learn to play with those differences and build arcs slightly differently is what I've found. It's been very helpful.
Callum Dobson from Facebook says, being that you are actually Hoyt, would you consider playing the voice of Hoyt in an animated series?
So, number one, I am not actually Hoyt, but number two, I don't think I have the acting skill. I would not want my acting to hold back a story, and maybe it's possible that I try it out, and lo and behold, it just turns out great, and I'm a natural acting savant. I doubt it. I expect that me voicing a main character would be an overall negative to the production. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't voice someone, but when Stan Lee comes on the screen and he's just not as good an actor as everyone around them, it doesn't matter because it's Stan Lee. But if Stan Lee were playing, a main character, it would start to get really distracting. So my inclination would be no. I would not do that. I have never really considered doing that. But weirder things have happened, so...
Troy was wondering if we would ever, or you would ever, consider doing a Kickstarter to make the Mistborn movie and have them help you fund it.
So, Kickstarters for movies. Maybe. I don't know.
It's real hard.
It's real hard. So, here's one of the problems. Number one problem is that it's a big budget fantasy film. And sure, some things have done well on Kickstarter in that sort of realm, but none of them have required a $100 million budget. And so, and the biggest Kickstarters of all time have got $20 million?
I think the biggest one is $31 million.
$31 million. And those are for products you're getting, not a nebulous, maybe we will make a film. right?
I think the biggest movie Kickstarter was $4 million or something
Yeah.
like that for Veronica Mars.
Right. And so I would not really consider it right now. I think that if I really wanted to go that route, I could probably find investors who are big fans who also, have sold major tech companies and have too much money and are like, yeah, we'll make a film. I think that could happen. I don't think that's likely, but I think that is way more reasonable and plausible than asking the fans to fund it. I just don't feel good about that. Maybe in 20 years, the whole landscape will have changed and I will have failed in other methods, and then I'll come and be like, all right, guys, let's actually try this. But I honestly don't see that happening. It feels like too much of an ask for a handout, right? Like getting the Kickstarter for the leatherbound, we needed a little help, which is why we went to Kickstarter. And it has been about all we can handle, but we do think we can deliver you the product. In fact, we're 100% sure we can deliver you the product that we're promising. On the film, I would be like 5% sure I could deliver you the product that I want to deliver you. And that's a big ask. It's a much bigger ask than 99.9% chance that you are going to get your book in the time and all the things that you want in the time that we promise versus 5% maybe chance that you're going to actually get this film and 95% chance that we go to Hollywood with this money and they do their Hollywood thing and they end up with the money and we end up with none and no film. So that's the scariest thing to me. Like, from what I understand of Hollywood and people who have gone to Hollywood, the quickest way to one of the quickest ways to lose money in the world is to go to Hollywood with money in your pockets, wanting to make something. And there are lots of people who will happily take that money to help you not actually make something.
I've seen several comments in the chat, and I know you already discussed this on Reddit after your Comic-Con live today, but a lot of people are looking for clarification on
I just flubbed the question. So what happens, this is the Oathbringer question. I get in my head, so one of the problems with answering questions while I do other things is I get pre-prepared responses that my brain just goes to, and that's the case with that. Oathbringer is not a Shardblade. I don't know what I was thinking, but I fed out one of the common answers I get to common questions. Oathbringer is just a regular Shardblade. Stoneward blade from a long time ago. So that was just me flubbing the question. I apologize for that. That's going to happen, hopefully not that often, but it happens a fair amount.
Yeah, that was a busy day, as I recall. So it makes total sense.
But yeah, it really is that I get so that I can sign books. Maybe not like this. This is a lot easier. But I get so that I can be writing people's names and quotes in their books while I'm answering questions. And so my brain builds these little pathways where it's like, this is question number 147. Answer that one. You've done it 500 times while you're talking to this person, while you're signing their book. And that just triggered one of those responses. And it was just me completely flubbing the question.
A question that just came in. Relates to actually the Guardian article that came out about you today.
Oh, yeah. Did that come out?
That came out today,
yeah. How was that?
It was good.
Yeah.
I guess let us know in the chat if you guys read it. I linked it on your social media channels.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. Obviously, it talks a lot about your beginnings in writing. And someone asked a question, Ann Fay from YouTube. They want to know how you deal with or looking for advice for project rejection.
Project rejection. All right. So we've talked about this before, so I apologize if I'm repeating some stories. But the best thing I've found to do is to build confidence in the fact that you want to be a writer and that you can create things that you are satisfied with. That confidence can't go so far that you stop listening to this feedback, however. So it's a delicate balance. But if you are confident, like if I write something and it just does not land, it doesn't shake my confidence in the fact that I love writing and that I enjoy this process and I have written good things in the past. What it does is say, I misfired on this one, or I maybe have to narrow my understanding of what the audience for this particular project will be, or things like that. Like if something fails right now, or gets rejected, or whatnot, then I cannot let it shake my core of my being, and can try to do what's best for the project rather than making it about whether I'm a good writer or not. And that leap is really a valuable leap to do. When the criticism stops shaking your belief that you are doing what you want to be doing and what you quote unquote should be doing. Very, very important. How do you get there when you haven't sold anything? Well, that's where the how confident are you in how much you enjoy this and how much you think this expression of who you are is a valuable part of your life experience. And that sounds like a bunch of new age mumbo jumbo, but it really did help me to make the decision. I'm going to be a writer. I'm going to keep writing because I love writing. I may never be of a high enough quality to hit the A-list, but that's okay because my first goal in writing is to tell these stories and to get better at doing so. When that becomes unshakable, criticism and rejection take on a completely different cast to you. And like I said, it is tricky because you don't want to get to the confidence where you don't want that to lapse into, I am so great that nothing I do can be criticized. That's not what I'm saying you should be doing. Your work should still be critiquable and you should still be willing to learn. But whether or not you belong as a writer is the thing you can make uncritiquable through your own confidence. And I recommend that to you. Like I said, it's one of these things. It's a hard line to find. And everyone's psychology is different. And so what worked for me may not work for you. But I find that squishing that means I don't have performance anxiety. I don't have, imposter syndrome sort of things. I don't have any of these because I know I'm doing what I want to do. And it still sucks when I write something and it doesn't work, right? That never goes away. When the Apocalypse Guard did not work, that was still hard. But it didn't shake me to the core. It shook that project and made me set it aside to work on it later. So, does that help? I don't know if that helps. That might be too individual to my personal psychology, but maybe it will help.
Just want you to know you're getting a lot of love for your beard right now.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that you really take that to heart and join the Brotherhood of Beards.
Brotherhood of Beards. Yeah, well, I teach at BYU once a year, so the beard cannot be a permanent fixture.
Hopefully they change that.
Yeah, maybe someday they will. We will not get into that. But,
yeah, that's another discussion.
I have to admit, beards are pretty annoying. I find them annoying. If I weren't doing it for the completely coincidental reason that I talked about on last stream, then I probably would not have lasted this long. I do like how I look in a beard. I just do not like the feel of them at all.
You get used to it real quick.
I mean, the longest time I've had one was for like 8 months. And
that's a pretty long time.
I have done beards for extended periods of time. But I never loved them. But they do look nice. I do think beards make for a nice, different look. And my brother is growing one as well. Completely coincidental, completely unrelated to the thing.
Odds?
What are the odds that both my brother and I would grow beards randomly in the weeks leading up to family pictures when my mother hates the fact that we wore beards to her last family picture. What kind of weird, coincidence that is, eh?
I'm actually surprised she's never told me I need to shave mine.
Well,
probably because she's never seen me without it.
Her head, you have a beard.
Yeah.
That's what you are supposed to look like. In her head, see, she wouldn't mind if I had been wearing a beard consistently, and that was my look. What she is mad about is her last family pictures came out. And her sons, who had no beards for 30 some odd years of their lives, had them for a few months, got family pictures, and now for the last 10 years or whatever, she's had on her wall this picture that does not look like her sons normally look.
I am 100% sure that if I ever shaved, she would ask me to grow it back. I do humanity a favor by keeping it.
I love those memes where you see the picture of the big rugged guy with his big rugged beard, and then the picture with it out with him, doing the baby face or things like that. I love it when people do that.
Anyway, sorry for the distraction. Jonathan is wondering how much of an outline you needed to have while you were trying to sell Stormlight, maybe the first time, and what kind of details did the publisher want to ensure you'd be able to deliver?
So I'm in a weird place in that after they wanted to buy Elantris, I sent them Stormlight, and the book was just finished. I didn't have to have an outline for them because at that point they're like, what are you working on right now? I'm like, well, I just finished this other book. Let me send it to you. And it was too much for them. They didn't want to commit to that. They probably would have if I would have pushed them. But they were very hesitant. They asked me first, can we cut this? Can we do this in 2 parts? And I'm like, it's already only part of a story. That seems like a bad idea. But it also had all the problems that you can now read about now that we've delivered it to you to read. And so I was in a very odd place. When I went to them with Mistborn, though, I did provide an outline. I provided it not quite as solid an outline as the Skyward one that Adam can probably link to in the liner notes, the Skyward outline.
Yeah.
We've got that somewhere, which was my YA editor tends to need a bit of a stronger outline than my adult publisher does. This is for a couple of reasons. Number one, YA tends to have a bigger problem with books going too long. This is just by the genre. Granted, there are lots of series that break out of this, but once you're starting to go past about 120,000 words, it gets a lot harder and tougher of a sell marketing-wise to the audience and to the bookstores. And so they really like to know, in YA and middle grade especially, if the story feels like the right scope for the length that you have promised them. Plus, this might be more of a Random House versus Tor thing. At Random House, it's just that there are so many more books and so many more people that have to work on them that having an outline that's a summary that you can go to the art department with and things is a lot more handy than it is at Tor, which tends to have a bit of a smaller family feel to it, even still. And the lengths are not quite as strict over there. And plus, with them, I have made a name for myself by ignoring length limits anyway. And so they're just like, whatever, Brandon. I was on a call with Davey, who's my editor over there at Tor, and she was like, so how long is this one now, Brandon? You promised me it'd be shorter. And I'm like, well, it's like 1,000 words shorter. But it's her fault because she asked for revisions that I added in, and it made the book longer. But they just kind of know that they're just going to deal with it. When my books come in, I am now at I have the status in the genre where you just get the Brandon Sanderson book and you are happy you got it. And I am not at that status in YA, though I do sell very well. It's just that the top end of YA is so much toppier than the top end of epic fantasy that I am not quite as I'm the same size fish in a much larger pond over there, and it is a genre where things are a little stricter on lengths. They would work with me if I wanted to do something longer, but it's just really comforting to them to have an outline. So that's a big rambling answer to. That's why this Skyward outline, is it the Skyward one we send people, or is it the Star Site? It's the Skyward. That's why the Skyward outline, it's going to read a little more linearly than my outlines normally do. I've talked about it on my lectures, but with my outlines, a lot of times it's more like here is an arc and a character arc, and here are the parts of it, but they aren't just put in order. in the where the book, how it's actually going to be. The Skyward one is basically chapter by chapter. But I sent something like that for Mistborn to finally get around to your question, to show them what I wanted to do with this series and how it was going to look, particularly for the first book. I didn't tell them about all 9 books until they had accepted book 1. When they'd accepted book 1, I'm like, all right, so here's what we're really doing. And my editor's like, I'm just going to tell them it's a trilogy for now, and we'll deal with the next eras when it comes around. But I love your ambition, Brandon. He would always say things like that, Moshe. And so, yeah. Rambling answer to your question. I apologize for that, but I think the answer is, when I did the 2010 version of Way of Kings, I went in with a pretty strong outline, and I don't think they even read it. Right? Because they're like, Brandon, we're going to publish it. Why are you doing this? I'm like, well, I thought maybe I'd do this big pitch thing. They're like, what do you want? I'm like, I want a Michael Whalen cover and colored end pages. And they're like, great, we'll do it. Tom did eventually read the whole pitch and everything. Like, Tom reads quite a lot, and he's read the entire Stormlight Archive series and things. But he was like, you don't need to pitch to us at this point, Brandon.
This next question from Billy is a little bit more of a Cosmere lore question, which we typically try and steer clear. Michael had it pulled for us.
Okay.
But it says, does Allomancy have cognitive and spiritual manifestations as well as the physical?
Yes. Yes.
Maybe there was a question mark on the end of that one.
What's that?
Said that maybe there was a question mark on the end of that one.
Yes, it does, but...
Okay,
asterisk.
good enough.
Yeah.
The King of Herdaz says...
Lopen. Wait, no, King of Herdaz. Lopen was King of Alfcar. So.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He says, in the Stormlight books, the number 10 is thematically and culturally very important.
Yes.
In the Way of Kings Prime, the word 10 set is commonly used to refer to 10 of something.
Yep.
So when Rosharans in the published Stormlight books talk about a dozen of something, do they mean 12 or do they mean 10?
Comes down to, it's a great question. I've been using 10s more often in Stormlight because I found that people will go with it. One of the problems I felt with Way of Kings Prime was that the world building was, the learning curve was too steep. So when I wrote Way of Kings, the new version, I scaled back a little on that. Like, we mention weeks, but we don't talk about the fact that on Roshar a week is 5 days, right? We talk about hours, but we don't go into the length of time a day is, which, is, it gets all wibbly wobbly, shall we say. And my explanation of this is these are all in translation. And so the translator, who is me, who is interpreting it, most of the time when they say 10s, I will write a dozen or something like that. But not always. Now, I am edging toward more 10s because in world they would use 10s. And Peter is okay with this. Karen's like, it makes continuity a little wonky. But I feel like having gone as long as we have, people are okay dealing with more of that. So I'm leaning that direction. But understand, I am the translator presenting this to you. Pretend that when Wit says something that's a pun in their language, I am finding a pun in English that is similar and writing it out. He's not actually saying what the book is having him say, but this is all just something you have to put in to imagine to keep that sense of immersion for you, and whichever one works to help you. But yeah, they would be using 10s. They'd say 10s of this instead of dozens more often.
From the YouTube chat, Rachel wants to know where you put yourself on the introvert-extrovert spectrum.
So I would probably put myself as an introvert with a very, very strong extroverted secondary mode. I wouldn't technically call myself an omnivert, if such a thing even exists, because in general, social situations, they wear me out more than they energize me. That said, I am not the type of introvert that is shy of taking control, or of being on camera, or of any of that sort of thing. It doesn't come as naturally to me as perhaps some of my truly extroverted friends, but it doesn't bother me a lot like a lot of my truly introverted friends. That was a bad sentence. But how it would bother many of my more introverted friends. And so, don't think I'm a true omnivert. I don't even know if that, like I said, is a real thing. But I am very good at playing the extrovert, and it doesn't bother me like it would a lot of introverts. But if you leave me, for instance, when I'm at conventions, right? When I'm at a con, some of my extroverted friends, what they love to do is after all the panels and things is go to the parties and hang out, right? That's just really fun to them. There's an energy there of all these people who love science fiction and fantasy fandom getting together. And when I'm at a con, evening after I've done all my events is my time to relax. I'm going to go play Civilization in my room. I am not going to go to the parties unless it is explicitly required of me to go to the parties. Not because I want to hide from you all, but because I'm exhausted from the day and I don't relax by going to a party. I relax by working on a book or playing a video game or reading a book. And so I think that is classically introverted by the, kind of the definitions, the actual definitions. Even though I can play extrovert very well, I have no problem going on television, standing in front of a class, being the person who has to be the one to go up and talk to the editor when you're all unpublished writers and nobody wants to do it. Like, I'm totally fine doing all of that stuff. So,
Next story wants to know, says, you've mentioned before that you have played D&D.
I have.
Will you please tell us a little bit about the characters that you've played?
So you will always find me playing some sort of mage or thief, right? Now, that really only excludes a couple of classes, right? Because by mage, I've played clerics. Not a lot of druids, but I would play a druid. My favorite archetype, and you could totally guess this, is illusionist. If you can give me a hybrid thief, rogue / illusionist character, I am going to be in my element. And there are a few things as boring as people talking about their D&D characters, so I'll spare you the details. But two of my more famous in the group characters were Zabinus, spelled with an XZ, which he named himself because he thought it sounded cool. An illusionist who convinced the rest of the party that he was a very, very powerful Gandalf-style wizard from another realm whose powers had been locked and sealed, and that he needed them all to join him on his quest, which is not something that the DM came up with or had any idea, in order to unlock his powers from the evil dragon so that he could again become the really powerful wizard. And everyone in the group bought it immediately because they said, of course, because Brandon is the type of player who would go to the DM and convince him to let him do this. And so they had no question. They just thought I had gone to the DM, rolled up a 20th level character, convinced the DM, because I tend to be good at talking my way into things and getting what I want, if you could believe that. And they just thought I had a 20th level character sheet. And I kept them going for months upon months, thinking and taking over the entire adventure, and the DM they're like, we gotta go help Zabinus get his powers back, and the DM's like, you're not doing the thing I wanted to do. You're instead doing Brandon's story that he just made up, that doesn't even exist. He's playing you all, and it was really fun. That was a whole lot of fun, and so the other character after that one that I made was named Sinethar, the really old. And his deal was that he'd been a wizard all his life among the elves. This was, I think, in Eberron, maybe, where they had good undead. I think it was Eberron. And he had been this guy among them, and he'd been like basically the servant mage of the people. He'd be casting spells for the benefit of the people. They could come to him, kind of like a mage version of mage version of like a doctor who works in a free clinic, right? And now he was really old, and he's like, you know what? I want to see the world. I am done with this. I'm going to go be an adventurer. I'm going to get really famous, and then they'll turn me into one of these undead things that serve in the Undead Council. And so his goal was to spend the last years of his life becoming the most overpowered individual that he can. And he min-maxed and ruined every rule that he could find in order to become the most powerful min-maxed character of all time, in order to prove, to himself that he could have gone out when he was a kid and been an adventurer. And he was a lot of fun too. Though I had taken all the, there were, again, min-maxing, there were all these things that let you increase your character's intelligence and wisdom for age, and minus to their constitution and their strength and things like that. Maybe an optional rule, I don't know. But I had done that to the max of its ability, so he had to cast spells to get his chair moving around because he was so old that walking was kind of rough on Sinethar. So those are my two more famous among my D&D group. You can ask Dan about either of those or Earl, some of my D&D buddies. Those were both times where I was not DMing. I often would be DMing, but there you go.
Vivasure, Club Emo Teen. Don't know what that means. Makes me feel very old to be saying something like that. They say, I know people who relate a lot to Shallan's arc due to how similar her personalities are to dissociative identity disorder.
Yep.
Did you intentionally write her to be recognizable DID?
I did, but I shied away from it in the early books because I knew I was going to be doing fantastical things and I didn't want to be offering too much commentary on DID. That was kind of my worry. Like with Kaladin, I knew depression well enough from family members and things that I felt like I could be a very strong contributor to the conversation. But I started with Shallan saying, I don't know if I'm going to go this route. But then the further I went, the more I felt it would be irresponsible to not do this. And so in the last books, I just bit the bullet, dug really far into the DSMV and into reading first-hand primary accounts from people. We got a very helpful person with DID to be one of our beta readers for this last book, and I just did my best to present it accurately and to present the non-Hollywood version of it. And so basically, Oathbringer and Rhythm of War lean into it a little more than the first two books do, though that was where I was going. And I do have a working knowledge of dissociative identity disorder, and did even back then. So I don't think I did a terrible job, but I think it would have been irresponsible for me to go forward. Yeah. So go forward without digging in a little further. I'm trying to think. I heard a word used for. I've frequently used, which is one of the words that I heard during my my schooling of psychonormative and non-psychonormative, but it's always sat a little wrong for me because implying that there's a normal is also in some ways just a dangerous place to be. It's like back when we would say there was civilized culture and uncivilized culture, which is a really kind of bad way to talk about it if you think about it, because it's culture is culture, and it's like pretending one is civilized. And so I heard a better, I think it might have been psychodivergent, but even that, no, it wasn't that. So I'm trying to remember what it was. I heard a much better term.
Neurotypical or
neuroatypical?
Neuroatypical differences?
But even I heard one that was even better than that. Neurotypical is a better one. I should replace in my my conversation. I should use that at the very least. But I heard a really good term like, oh, that's the word I've been looking for, but now I can't remember it. I'll have to go look it up and see where I found it. If you guys have heard great terms that would be better to use here, pass them along. But yeah. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Earlier in the chat, someone asked a question. I don't remember who. I apologize. They asked a question that I thought was interesting. They want to know if you have a term for a group of spren, kind of like a gaggle of geese or something like that.
I have not come up with one. That's a great question. I've never considered it before. I would be taking suggestions.
And two people are the two common things that we're getting are neurodivergent and neurotypical.
Neurodivergent,
those
neurotypical.
Are the popular ones that people
those
are
are
saying.
popular ones. I heard one that just felt better to me, but yeah. But those are the terms that I think are in common parlance right now. I think that you are right.
Corvo says it should be a sprout of spren.
A sprout of spren. That's not bad.
I like the alliteration. It's fun.
Yes. But the problem with sprout of spren is, so when I first took, here's a little diversion for you. When I first took Dave's class back in 1999, this is Dave Wolverton / Farland when he taught the class at BYU that I now teach. A lot of the things he said really have stuck with me all the years. And one of the things he said is, there's this danger in fantasy when you write he flew across the room. And in a realistic thing, he flew across the room means he moved very quickly across the room, right? But in fantasy, there's that question where when someone reads that phrase, does it mean they flew across the room or not? What does it actually mean? Metaphoric language in fantasy has extra problems. Like this happened in Starside a lot. Peter kept saying, when I want to say, Spencer was flying really fast, so she shot through the air, and he's like, her ship can shoot. And so when you say she shot through the air, is she pulling the trigger and shooting something through the air, or is she moving very quickly? Maybe you should use darted or something like that. And that's a problem with something like a sprout of spren. Using it in conversation in the books, if I were ever to say a sprout of spren, that would throw people, right? Even if they knew what it was. And so you'd have to find a word that that feels right and is not going to throw people. It's not going to make you have the he flew across the room problem.
One that I saw on here that was good was a nuisance of spren.
A nuisance of spren. See that?
Which would
that's pretty
Sorry,
good.
I couldn't find who said that, but that was a good one.
Problem is only the more few spren are actually a nuisance, but the ones that are can be really big nuisances. So
it bleeds into all the other ones.
Yes.
Z-Man 966 says, you've assured readers that Kaladin is a safe name to use for a child or pet. Would you be willing to comment on Adolin in the same way?
I would not. I would say, here's my thing. I'm gonna. This all gives too many spoilers. You're gonna think I'm saying something about that. The reason I would not is not because of anything specific I'm planning about Adolin, even though you're going to assume that from the way I said this. It is actually not. It is because I realize the danger in confirming that sort of thing, and giving away too much of the future. And so I would say that most of these names are safe in that if they turned out to have to go down a dark route, you could make the argument that you named the character after them when they were on the right path. You could still name a kid Anakin, and Anakin encapsulates the good part of Anakin Skywalker, right? And I think you can do that and not have it be like, you are naming your kid after a terrible space tyrant who murders children. Well, technically, he turned into that, but I am not going to tell you other names that are safe. It just potentially gives too much away. What I can promise is that I will try very hard to treat the characters well as they will let me in the arcs that they decide and journeys they decide to go on.
I guess either way, it's a spoiler.
Yeah.
So. We have another question from the King of Herdaz. He says, Roshar, and I think he did the other number-based question, but this one is also number-based. Or he, who, whoever you are.
Yep.
They. Thank you. Roshar is themed around the number 10, Scadrial, and the Cosmere of the Whole is themed around the number 16. Are there any other planets themed around certain numbers? And if so, where and what are they? Or read and find out.
Read and find out for that, but yes, this is a thing that I wanted to do at the beginning of the Cosmere, and really leaned into in a couple of them. Honestly, with Mistborn, 16 became the thing, but I was planning to lean into 4 more than 16 for that series. But then 16 became so important to the whole Cosmere, and I wasn't sure. Yeah, let's just say 4 was where I was going to go with that one. But yes, there are others. Whether I'll actually really lean into them or not remains to be seen. But yes, I have plans.
So this next question, I'm assuming they're referring to info dumping. But Divine Arbalest says, what are your tips on giving information? I'm writing something that is set in our world and relies heavily on history and mythology, and I don't want to just end up giving a lecture.
Right. So many ways to do this. The thing to remember is generally you need less of this than you think you need. People are going to connect to characters and plots, and there will be cool things about your setting, even if it's an Earth, that will connect people. But generally, do less than you think you need. That's kind of tip number 1. If you are getting a lot of feedback from early readers that they want more, you can try more. But the other thing is, the story I often share in this regard is how my wife will feed my children smoothies, and she will add spinach to the smoothie to turn them green, which to the children is just like, this is cool because we're eating something green. And to my wife, it's like, I am giving them spinach. I am a good mom. And what you want to try to do is get the information across to them in such a way that they think they're getting it because it makes the story green, or just this is cool. When in reality you are slipping them vital information about world building, about lore and history. But the third tip is, if there is a good in-world reason for this to happen, readers accept it and even like it a lot more. For instance, if you have a history professor as a character, and the history professor is the type of person who can present things in really engaging ways that work with the story and people have fun hearing it, and it's written in a character's voice, so the fun of the character's voice works, then they will just be like, this is great. I love reading about this. I love when this character comes on and talks about history, even though it's kind of info dumpy. If you can find reasons, this is why the Watson character works so well, right? A character who doesn't know about the things that the other character knows about, and the character then has a reason to explain them in hopefully an interesting and engaging way to their sidekick, and in so doing also explain them to you. This is a skill. I call it in my class the grand skill of writing sci-fi fantasy, is learning how to do this in a way that is fun, engaging, and not boring. And you'll have to find your own balance. Basically, the subgenre you're writing is going to influence this. The characters that you're writing are going to influence this, and your own personal preferences. Some people like to read books that just have way more info dumps because it's fun to them. And so your audience is going to influence that.
And I've seen a few comments in the chat wondering about preview chapters for Rhythm of War.
Oh, preview chapters for Rhythm of War. Yep.
If you're looking to read those, you can go into the video description, and there's a link to Tor's website, which will, depending on when you're watching this, it will take you to all of those.
Yep. I will probably pop in to some of the threads discussing this. I'm going to assume that on the Stormlight Reddit there's a thread. There might be one on Facebook when if Adam every week when Adam posts a link to the new chapters. We may just want to say comments will be spoilers for the new chapter. It's just a general rule when you link to those.
So I guess if you're not in one of those threads, please don't spoil it.
Yeah.
Because there are people who are waiting for the book to be out, and we don't want to ruin it for them.
Yep. But I will probably pop in to those two places and likely the Tor thread. It's going to depend on how busy I am, how much I do. But it was very fun for Oathbringer to have these threads going in these various locations where people were discussing the book, particularly on Tor.com and on Reddit. And so I will likely pop in and see how the conversations are going and things like that. And you can read a few chapters every week. Is that what they're going to do? 2 chapters a week, Adam?
Sometimes 2, sometimes 1. I think they're
depends
starting
on the
with
length.
2 for the next seveverall weeks because we're starting a bit later than we had intended.
Yeah, we had planned to start this mid-June.
End of June.
End of June. basically the copy edit, we had to wait till the copy edit was done. And so, anyway, we should be releasing a chapter or two every week between now and the release of the book. It was really fun for Oathbringer to basically treat the book a little bit like a weekly episode, that then you got to binge the last 2/3 of the book, because we released them when the book comes out. We don't put them online, but you can get them. And so, yeah, if you want to read along and kind of take part in those discussions, and there's likely going to be discussion on the 17th Shard, I would guess, as well, and maybe on some of the forums you frequent that I'm not aware of. It was very fun to just interact with people as they were getting it chapter by chapter, a little bit each week, and then get the massive dump when the whole book comes out.
Andrew wants to know what Emily thinks of your beard. Emily is his wife.
So Emily doesn't hate and doesn't love beards. She's a little bit beard agnostic. She generally likes the look of them and does not like the kissing feel of them, which I've heard is not uncommon among women married to beardy guys. But some like the feel. She's basically whatever you want to do is fine.
Aiden says, I'm writing my own book right now, and I'm having trouble with discerning good feedback from bad feedback.
Yeah.
Any advice?
Boy, this is rough, Aiden. It takes almost as much skill to learn how to to distinguish this feedback as it does to write books. So understand it's a process. Here are a couple of tips. Number one is try to ignore all the feedback till you are done with the story. Even if you're getting feedback, like getting feedback in the middle of a story is generally very bad for new writers and for anyone who's discovery writer inclined. This comes with the asterisk that I do know several discovery writers that like to write a chapter or a few chapters, then go to people and say, what are you expecting? What do you like? So that they can then kind of find the soul of their story and continue on it. So it's not every discovery writer. Some of them love getting feedback early. But the danger is, so bad feedback is generally feedback that is trying to turn your story into what that person would write, rather than helping you make a better version of the story you are trying to write. And that is a very difficult thing for readers to learn, which is why we often suggest that when you solicit advice, you ask them to just describe their emotional responses to things, rather than to try to fix the problem. So that's a tip for you. Having some distance between the story and the feedback is very handy. Back before I was a pro, I would always try to take 6 months off from finishing a book. I would take like 6 months to get feedback, and then I would come back to it, read through all the feedback, and then do revisions. Feedback that you read and you're like, wow, that would make my story way better. Feedback that you try to change things and you like how it's going is good feedback. Do understand that I generally take about, it seems, 1 out of 3 pieces of feedback that come from beta readers or from alpha readers. Depends on the alpha reader. Some of my editors, like Moshe. I take a lot more of Moshe's feedback than I take of other people's feedback. It's still often like only 50 to 60%, I would guess. But a lot of times, it's very helpful to get the feedback where people are like, I am really confused right here. I don't know what's happening. Is more useful than, you should do this or you should do that. The more you practice writing, the more confident you'll be in the type of story you want to write. Bad feedback also sometimes comes when you have a misaligned audience. There are times in writing groups where I've had someone submitting a YA book to a bunch of people who don't consistently read YA, and their feedback was frequently off for that book because it was going to try to steer it to become an epic fantasy instead of a YA book like the author was trying to write. So there's a little bit for you. We have Isaac here. Isaac promised to come in. I actually asked Isaac if he would do story time with you today because he has his picture book that he wrote, and we talked about it a few weeks ago. And so I said, why don't you come read the picture book to everyone, like we have story time. Is Isaac's camera on?
He's good.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was over looking at Adam.
So, Isaac is going to read to you Monsters Don't Wear Underpants and show you the pictures, just like you were in grade school and you were sitting and there was a visiting teacher who read you a book. I always loved that.
Yeah, we actually did that once with this book. My 7-year-old daughter said at story time that she wanted me to come in and read it, and so we did that last year as well. So,
Yep.
all right, we're gonna do this,
We're
huh?
gonna do this. You're gonna
Okay.
read the Monsters Don't Wear Underpants.
So first off, this is a book that I wrote. I was under contract for it at a publisher, and we decided ultimately to part ways. And so we're thinking about doing it as a Kickstarter in October this year. So I'm going to read it to you. Okay. Adam, let me know if it's in a good spot.
You're good.
Okay. I don't have this quite
I'm
memorized.
just gonna adjust your audio since we didn't get a sound check.
Yeah, let's get a sound check.
You did all the illustrations?
Yes, wrote and illustrated it.
Mm.
So you just tell me if we're good.
I did that for Way of King's Prime, right? I wrote
Yeah.
and illustrated
Yeah,
Way of
and
King's Prime.
we actually have
That's my
some of those illustrations in the
Yeah.
in the book. So maybe it would be better if I can hold it back like this.
Mm-hmm.
You ready? Okay. Monsters Don't Wear Underpants, a Lift the Flap book. Get back here, little blue. You need...
Let's move the microphone just a little bit. Just a little loud.
There we go. You need underpants. And this is a mock-up that I made of the book to show it off. So, but Mama, monsters don't wear underpants. And he's off into the night. Excuse me, miss. Do vampires wear underpants? Poof. Not when you're a bat. Hey, you up there. Do dragons wear underpants? No way. Their toots are too toasty. Ouch. I feel like we need like a studio audience or something, or a recorded laugh track, right?
I mean, we're here.
Time to meet the boogeyman. He never wears underpants. That's why he hides under the bed. I'm so embarrassed.
And the mom is back from the dragon.
Yeah, a little bit worse for wear. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. At bath time, I felt like that sometimes when I was a kid. I mean, as a parent.
People are saying they're going to put this on their Goodreads, so it counts as their reading goal.
There you go. Does the Invisible Man wear underpants? Nope. Oh, little blue. Many monsters do wear underpants. The Fishman, for instance, wears underpants every day. They're always wet, but he likes it that way. Cheers. The Blob is the clearest case I can find. Does it also wear underpants? Yes, dear. All kinds. Oh my gosh. Hey, Mama, what's this? A genie's lamp, but don't touch. Do genies wear underpants? Poof. You have 3 wishes to find out. That genie was totally wearing underpants. Yeah, he was. But what I really want to know is, do you wear underpants? You do! What about Daddy? Does he wear underpants? Yep. If Mommy and Daddy both wear underpants, then I must be the kind of monster who... wears underpants too. So
There you are.
there you are. My first epic fantasy.
My favorite comment was from Lauren, who said that she was going to read it to her high school students. So maybe she has some issues with her high school students wearing underpants.
Okay. Is this my sister, Lauren?
No.
Okay. I guess she teaches middle school anyway, so.
So I have set up a Kickstarter page. If any of you are interested when it goes live to be reminded for it, you just go to monsterunderpants.com and you can sign up for this. We're going to do it in November. It's just going to be a very October, sorry, thank you. Just a very straightforward Kickstarter. It's just going to have a couple of tiers, and it's basically buy the book or don't buy the book. I mean, so probably for $20. So there you go.
Yeah, it was really cool when the book deal happened and things, and then just wasn't a good match.
Yeah, it wasn't a good match.
Yep. No real complaints about the publisher. It just didn't end up. Sometimes those things just happen, right?
Yeah, they do.
I've had friends who've left their agents not because the agent's bad, just not a good match.
Yeah.
So.
And we had this was an interesting book because it went to acquisitions 3 times.
Yeah.
And normally when you get to acquisitions, it's more of a sure bet. I mean, you can always. I've known people where it hasn't worked out, but board books are just a really hard sell.
Yeah. Because it's going to be the thick board book style. Right?
Yeah, this is the kind you see kids chewing on.
Right. So it's a picture book, but it's not the flimsy picture book. It's the...
No.
Yeah. And that whole market, like, I've known some picture book authors, picture books and board books. It is a rough market.
Yeah, it is.
Partially because the books have to be so expensive to print. Like, you think a big epic fantasy is expensive to print. Full color board book that people then expect to cost $5 because it's for a little kid.
Yeah.
Those margins get really, really crazy.
Yeah, and then you add a die cut flap on every page.
Yeah.
And you expand the size from 6 inches to 8 inches so that it feels a bit more substantial. And yeah. They're not cheap to print.
I've also heard that they one of the difficulties with picture books, this is just from picture book authors, is that there is such a turnover rate in the bookstores that basically it's much harder to make it to the staple. And if you do, that's great. You're always in the stores, but there are much fewer slots for that, and there's just huge turnover. Just everyone kind of expects to go to the bookstore and find all new picture books in 3 months, which is cool. You get to go look through all these things, but it means that there are just so many more that just aren't selling and are vanishing. You get less time to make a name for yourself.
And shelving those it's kind of confusing to go into a bookstore and find them because the spines are this thick, right?
Yep.
As opposed to, Way of Kings on the shelf takes up, a billboard of real estate, whereas a picture book, you can have like 300 on one shelf, and it's just really difficult to sort through them all and decide what you want.
Yep. Fewer staple authors too. It's a bit harder to just like have real estate on the shelf. Like if you go to any bookstore, you'll find the Brandon Sanderson section, and we'll have like a shelf, or sometimes 3 or 4. That happens in picture books, right? Like Mo
Willems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of these will get, become staples.
Yeah, Chris Van Allsburg.
Yeah. But it just is harder to do that.
It is.
So it's a rough market.
There's a few people that can make it in that market.
All the royalties are being split between 2 people most of the time.
Yep.
Right?
Unless it's written and illustrated.
Yep.
And then you're splitting it with yourself.
Which half of you gets the illustration part, and which half gets the...
Well, I type with both hands.
Oh, yeah.
And so the right half probably... And I draw with the right hand, so...
Yeah.
But, I do use the mouse, the keyboard shortcuts with the left, so I'm going to have to split it equally between the left half and the right half, I'm afraid.
Not sure if we want to go to questions or if you brought things to show.
Oh, yeah. Do you have others? Isaac's got some show and tell for the leatherbound.
Yep, I've got some more show and tell. We thought that today might be a good time for us to show off all of the color illustrations that are going to be in the book, and these are printed on the exact paper. Yeah.
Oh, and sorry, before we go on, the levels I'm seeing on my computer make it look like you're okay, but if Isaac's audio isn't right, can you please let me know in the chat so I can adjust that as he's talking? Thanks.
Okay. So this is the exact paper that is going to be used with the books. This was a runoff from the printer so that we could see what they're going to look like. Some of these you've already seen, but I'm just going to go through it fairly quickly and just talk to you about each one. So we licensed Michael's wonderful cover for the front end paper, which many of you have seen that before. And then for the gallery at the front, we've started making the gallery at the front just a little bit smaller so that we can have more real estate throughout the book to intersperse color illustrations. But for this gallery, we're starting off with one of the French covers by Alain Brion. He does a lot of Brandon's covers, and he's really great.
One of my favorite covers. I think I've mentioned that before, but I love both of his, because it was in 2 volumes, Way of Kings was, illustrations for the French ones. They're just among my favorites.
Yeah, and we'll get to the next one right here. So, oops. See, that's...
Oh, yeah.
These are folded like little books because they get sewn into the front of the book.
Yep.
So... there we go.
Okay,
There's the second French one right here on the left with Chalon at the top of Carbrandt. And then on the right, on my right, we have Sam Green's UK illustration. And then we have Jian Guo's really beautiful rendition from the mainland Chinese version.
Yep.
Then we wanted a color map at the beginning of the book so that you have access to that when you're reading. And then we ended up with the new Russian cover, which is by Sergei Shikin. I'm probably getting his name wrong. Sorry, Sergei. But I think that's a really beautiful one.
And one thing, if you can just angle the pages so that catching the light, I think they're showing up a little dark, and I want people to be able to see these beautiful pieces.
There
So
we go.
just
and
get the light up there.
probably next week's Kickstarter update on Tuesday, you'll probably post all of these,
Yeah,
right?
if you want me to, I'm happy to do that. Yeah, we're trying to make those a lot bigger and fewer in between. So this next week's will be fairly big. We've got these that we'll post, and we also have some of the playing cards that we want to show off.
Playing cards are looking really good.
As well as some more stickers probably, and maybe some more of Steve Argyle's
Heralds. Yeah.
Heralds. So this next one is by Micah Epstein. And he's been really great to work with. But this is the Heralds leaving their blades behind in the prologue.
Yep.
And I really love this one. Really, really well done.
It's gorgeous.
And the emotion in it is also something that I really like. Next is Brian Mark Taylor. And here's an interesting thing that we did. On some of these that are 2 pages, rather than suddenly you have a blank page appearing in your book, we put the Windrunner glyph on it so that you can kind of see there's something cool coming up. So Brian Mark Taylor is somebody that we had do the cityscape in Warbreaker, and so he did a rendition of the Shattered Plains, which I think evokes the Shattered Plains really well. And he's a world-renowned landscape artist, and he's phenomenal. His originals in person just blow me out of the water. You've seen this one before, but I still really love it. This is Miranda's Navani and Dalinar at King Elokar's feast. And I just love how awkward Dalinar is in this shot. It's just, he's a fish out of water suddenly.
You do not get a lot of awkward Dalinar pictures.
No, that's why we had it painted, and I love it. And of course, we've seen this one, Howard Lyons, Kaladin with the Storm. This is our back end paper, and
I love
just beautiful.
these have all been okay.
Adam's vying for my job.
It's my. Oh, jeez, no. I can't think of something I'd rather do less.
All right, into volume 2. A couple of things you've seen before. We're just using the same end papers that we had from the Way of Kings.
Yep.
We wanted to include those. And I think that this is probably what we'll be doing for the second volume of each of the books, is including the original end papers.
Yep.
So, and then we have kind of the a little bit more of the fan art gallery, but this isn't fan art. This is official art. So this is kind of like outside of. So the first one has covers from around the world. Volume 2 has just art that I found that other people have done that I just really love. This is Ben McSweeney. He did this commission. We commissioned it from him many years ago.
Right at the beginning, it was concept art. That pitch that I did for Way of Kings, that I went to Tom Doherty to pitch, I had that Zeth picture as one of them.
Zeth's original icon, we did so many sketches of that, and we just kept coming back to Ben's picture of Zeth.
Yeah.
And that's what we finally just used. So here on the right, we have Rebecca Jensen's First Oath of the Knights Radiant, which we had as a poster several years ago. And she's touched it up and made it even better for this edition. On the left, we have Randy Vargas's The Blackthorn.
I love that painting.
One of my favorite Dalinars ever. He's battle worn. He's awesome.
Yeah, that was just fan art, right? Or
That was fan art.
Man,
Everything that guy's done has been.
that is just a spectacular
incredible.
painting.
He's a great guy too. And I love Randy's art. So here on the right, we have Ashley Codes, Seal fighting against the Deathspren. On the left, we have Audrey Hotz, Kaladin and Syl, which is another piece of fan art that I just really love.
You said those backwards. You said.
Well, his
Anyway.
left in his.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Stage. Yeah. So this one's Ashley Codes, and this one is Audrey Hotz.
Just wanted to make sure they got the right attribution.
Yeah, that's good. On the right here, we have, on my right, right
Wondering
here.
if you can hold them closer to the camera,
there we
I
go.
guess.
So this is Bea Jackson. Did this for, I think it was Writers of the Future, when the lesson was used in one of their volumes, and she painted this nice piece with Yasna and Shalon.
What they do at Writers of the Future is, I could be wrong, but I believe what they do is they have all the winners come and they give assignments to the illustration winners to illustrate the
Different stories.
the different stories. And then they put them in the published version.
Yeah,
and so they usually like to do a reprint from one of the judges in every volume, and so they asked me for something.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if she was a Writers of the Future winner. She was great to work with, and she's doing some fantastic art.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people are hoping to see these a little bit better. You'll be able to get really good images of them on Tuesday.
I'll
Tuesday.
post clearer images
So,
on Tuesday.
yeah, I'll post something on Brandon's social media that will take you to the Kickstarter page where you can see these.
Yeah.
Perfect.
On Tuesday.
On
We will post
Tuesday.
it. Yeah.
On the left here, we have Kelly Harris, who does the Navani sketches in starting in Oathbringer, and she did this nice rendition of the Stormfather, which I really like.
Was that one fan art?
Yeah, it started as fan art. Yep, and then the back, Tara Spruitt, who we licensed some tarot card set from her that she had been doing.
To
and
put in this.
and this is her Taravangian, which I just think is a really great rendition of Taravangian. I love the duality of it. All right. So, on the interior for Volume 2, which we started off with a piece. See, okay?
Yeah, just closer to the camera so people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've probably seen a version of this floating around that Dan Dos Santos has posted, but this is his rendition of a Parshendi warrior, and I think it looks really great. There's just one of my favorite interpretations of the Parshendi.
He just did a really cool magic card that got previewed today.
Oh,
Sword of Ice and Fire. He did a masterpiece type
cool.
version of that. So
I'm gonna have to go look that up. Dan did another piece for us, which is Kaladin and Syl.
that's one of the ones that was really hard to pick from his sketches, which one we wanted to do.
He gave us like 20 sketches.
Yeah, and they were all awesome.
They were all great. He and I talked the other day, and we're hoping to be able to release or use some of those on other things at some point.
The hardest part about working with Dan is getting those piles of cool sketches and having to pick one of them.
Yeah, and he's so good and so great to work with. This one I think we've shown before, but that's Navani painting the Thafglyph. Down. There we go. Thanks, Adam.
And that is by
Steve Argyle. Thank you, Steve Argyle, who's also doing the Knights Radiant pieces. And I really love this one. This is Audrey Hott again, and that is Yasna and Shallan. Yasna, rescuing her, and then just our normal back end paper, which we've seen before. So anyway, that's kind of a preview of all of the color art that is inside these. We're excited for you to be able to. I love flipping through these and finding them. They're they're a little bit thicker paper, and you flip to it, and it's like, oh yeah, cool art. I love it.
I will point out that I have moved on from Warbreaker leatherbounds, which are now done for this session. Yay! And I am signing UK Rhythm of War tip-in pages. So, folks from the UK and from Ireland, these will be distributed to your bookstores. Probably Waterstones is what I guess.
I believe so.
So, if you see signed edition, I am not traveling to the UK this year. We had it all scheduled, and then something happened to the world.
Oh, what was it? I can't think of anything.
And so, no longer traveling to the UK, so instead I'm signing all of these. So if you see a signed edition for sale in a Waterstones, it was signed probably right here during this signing session or next week's.
And for anyone who is listening in the UK, you should really be in bed. It's 4 o'clock in the morning there.
That's barely bedtime.
Well, okay. I take it back then. That's normal bedtime.
Yeah.
Well, if you have any questions for Isaac or Isaac and Brandon, go ahead and leave them in the chat.
Or just for me.
Or
either
just,
way.
we're going to start with you because we have questions for you right now, but I figured I'd make that open to everyone else. Excuse me. This one's from Ryan. He says, "The Way of Kings is what made me pursue writing, and I'm about halfway through my first novel, and I'm noticing that I have trouble with scene transitions. Any advice?"
Yeah, so number one, don't stress this too much in your first book. Scene transitions you will get better at, and you will find that it's easier and easier for you to figure out how to slice these things up the more you write. Couple points. I find that there are two basic kinds of scene transitions. One is we have just finished something, and it's we are done now, here's what's coming next scene transition. And so what you usually do in a lot of those is you basically bring the scene to an emotional close, and then you mention, in one line or something, now if I could just get this done, right? And that just kind of propels the reader on to say, okay, we still have momentum. The other is the cliffhanger. I need to wear my Raffo shirt. I keep forgetting. We have Raffo shirts now. This transition, my suggestion is generally to do it. I suggest something a little different than other people. A lot of times the cliffhanger transition, what it's meant to do is to make you quickly turn the page. And you either then continue the story immediately, or it just kind of propels you into what's happening next because you have this little hook, this little something has changed. It's really generally going to be the midpoint of a scene, but you cut out of it to just kind of start creating a pacing and a rhythm. I like to cut out of these scenes after the reveal, not before. A lot of people prefer to cut out of these scenes when the reveal is announced but hasn't happened. Let me explain. A cliffhanger where the reveal is announced but hasn't happened is when you say, and then there was a knock at the door, and then you cut. I generally prefer there was a knock at the door, they open the door, they see who's behind it, and then cut. Because I prefer to leave you with the imagining the implications of what that means. It also sometimes, as a writer, will force you to cheat a little less. One of the things I don't like as a reader is when it does there was a knock at the door, cut. You're like, oh, what's at the door? And then the next chapter is like, it was the pizza delivery man. They got pizza and they ate. And you're like, you just cheated. You just made me turn that page by having a false cliffhanger where nothing was going to ever happen. There's a certain author that'll be unnamed that does this a lot, where it's like, and then she began to tell the story of what happened to her. And then you're like, good. You turn the page and then like, but there was an explosion that's prevented her from telling the story. And you're like, again? I don't get to actually hear the story? You're going to make me wait? That really bugs me. And so I prefer ending on the implications if you can. But either way works for what you want in that sort of scene transition is the kind of, again, keep the pacing. Indication of continuing pacing is just very helpful for scene transition. If that's what you're meaning between characters, you could also be saying, I have trouble with the scene transition of our characters have finished having dinner and now are going to move on to discussing over dinner the issue at hand, which is transitioning one scene from one mode to another mode, like from a description mode to a dialogue mode. And those ones you will pick up. Just watch how authors do it. You will find that there are just lots of natural ways that people do it in conversation, and you can model those and use them in your stories. So watch what authors do. Start filling your toolbox with tools of things you've seen people do that you like.
This next question is for Isaac. They want to know if you get to decide what the naked hardcovers look like, and if you can discuss at all what the color for Rhythm of War will be, or if we even know that yet. I don't know.
Well, I can at least say what we are proposing to Tor for this, and they followed it for the last 3 books, so I don't see that this would change. So I do have a little bit of say on this. Usually Peter and I will discuss it. For example, I think on Oathbringer there was some discussion on how do we put the whole title of Oathbringer on there. And I think if you take the dust jacket off, it actually says Oath, and then there's a little kind of continuance symbol that is sort of designy, and then it says Bringer, right? So, but somebody, one of Tor's designers is the one who actually puts all of the foil together for that, like the actual file that will then be sent to the die makers for that. For Rhythm of War, it's the Will Shaper book, right? So these are... the color for the Will Shapers is amethyst, and I interpret that fairly loosely from light purple down to kind of a dark purple. There's this range, and this book I've suggested that it be a dark purple because I feel like that's what's going to fit best with the dust jacket.
Yeah.
And I keep looking over at Adam when I should be looking at the camera.
Or just at Brandon.
Or at Brandon. So the and I've also suggested gold.
No one saw that.
He did this.
Oh, were you not on me?
He was talking. So
okay, good. So when he's talking, I can make all kinds of faces.
Yeah.
No one can see it.
yeah, but now it's on you. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep it up in the air. You'll never know.
So I've suggested gold foil on a purple with the debossed Will Shaper glyph on the front. We might wind up with a lighter purple foil on it. That really depends on discussions with Tor's designers, but that's what we've recommended. Purple and gold are really solidly Will Shaper colors, and so that's kind of what we're hoping for.
And it'll match the cover, which we can't show you yet because it's not painted yet. We just have color concepts that we've seen, but Michael is working on it.
He is working hard on it, and he has said that he has made lots of progress, but what we can say is that I matched the purple to fit what he is doing on the cover.
Brendan, this next question is from you, from Tavish
From
White.
me?
For you, excuse me.
I'm typing secretly. Brendan, why are you so great?
And I'm going to alter this a little bit because I know kind of what the answer is. They're wanting to know if you're a comics guy, and if so, what some of your favorite comics are, or what they have been.
Right. I really like comics, but I got burned early in my my career is the wrong term. Early in my life on the constant changes in writers and illustrators. I was a big TMNT fan during the Eastman and Laird original run on TMNT, and like I followed it each issue, and then they weren't that interested in continuing to do TMNT comics. And after that, the art and writing varied widely after some of those things. And finally, I just am like, is this common? My comic book friends were like, yeah, this is just how it goes. The writer that you like may leave at any point. And I'm like, do the stories end? They're like, well, some of them do, some of them don't. Some of them are great, and I never really got into mainstream comics because of that. It bothered me to the point that I started reading arcs that my friends would recommend to me, and graphic novels. And so I really like a good graphic novel. And on a previous one, I talked about Bone and really liking Bone, which is a really interesting one because I read it after it was done. I waited till Bone was finished and read the whole thing. And then you got to see 10 years of this writer-illustrator's life as his interest in Bone, changed from different genres and subgenres and things. I really like Watchmen. I really like Kingdom Come. A lot of the big ones that were really big when I was a teen left quite the mark on me. This would be the early 90s and mid 90s. I followed the entire Death of Superman arc and really liked it. But then after that, fell out of Superman for the same reason that I generally fell out of comics, in that things changed, writers changed, illustrators changed, and I'm like, I'm just not liking this as much. So I do follow a number of web comics. Even still, I am a regular reader of Order of the Stick whenever it updates. And I've mentioned Dr. McNinja and Christopher Hastings, who I will buy whatever it is he's writing. He did Gwenpool for a while, and he did Adventure Time. I just really like his writing style. So I highly recommend, if you haven't read Dr. McNinja, going and reading it, because it is trippy, weird, and awesome in all the right ways. Sam and Fuzzy is another great webcomic that I often recommend, that I have enjoyed in its various different incarnations, because it changes like Bone very, not frequently, but as the author illustrator gets interested in different things, it kind of morphs into a different comic. So there you go. There's a few.
Eric wants to know if Syl has ADHD.
So I wrote Syl like I perceive my son who has ADHD perceiving the world. So yes, like that was a touchstone when I was writing her viewpoint, was that she would probably be diagnosed with ADHD if you gave her to a had her sit down and talk to a therapist now. She's Spren, so I'm not sure if I can call it true ADHD, because ADHD has certain root causes in human physiology and psychology, and Spren, but that's how I wrote her. I said, what would it feel like to be Syl? And I felt like she would exhibit some of the same behaviors and same thought patterns. So you could call that a yes. The short answer is yes. The long answer is I'm not sure if I can diagnose a Spren, and I shouldn't be diagnosing anyone because I am not certified to do so. But there you go.
This next question is for Isaac. Extreme Pain says, are the shash glyph on Cal's forehead that mean dangerous and the shash glyph for the Lightweavers related? If so, how?
I don't believe that they're related. I think these are words that, like in English, where we have two,
Yeah.
two, and two.
Mm-hmm.
There is also, I think, a shash somewhere else in one of the other books, and it might have been Warbreaker, and it's just a recurring sound. With the two glyphs, they're not related. They're as related as the word TOO and TWO are.
Okay. Andrew has a question for Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
He says, which member of Bridge 4 would you most like to invite to a dinner with your family?
Rock?
And would he be cooking?
Yes.
That seems like it would
I
work
would
out
try
very
it,
well.
even though I'm not sure that Rosharan food would appeal to me. It would be an interesting experience.
Okay. Another maybe quick one from Jennifer. She says, are there any Rosharan life forms other than the singers that have orange blood? That maybe you know right now.
I'll raffo that. I haven't honestly given it a lot of thought.
Chroma says, if your ethereal was real, would you live in it?
No.
These are quick. Okay. If you had to design a legendary creature for Magic the Gathering for Zeth, what would it do and what colors would it be?
Zeth?
Yes.
Wow. What would I do with Zeth? Zeth is maybe Mardu, right? Maybe Orzhov, right? It depends on if you get that red in there. He's very passionate, but his passions don't really direct him. It's more the logic. And so probably some sort of white-black, maybe with red. Like Mardu's a pretty good fit for him, but the red is definitely the weakest of those three. And what would I have him do? Boy.
Depends on if he's equipped with Nightblood or not.
Yeah, well, Nightblood's a completely different thing. I don't know. Like, the tricky thing about designing characters as Magic cards is the power sets in the Stormlight Archive do not match the colors of the personalities of characters. And a lot of times for the iconic Magic characters, they make their power set match their personality leanings, right? Jace is tricky and a mind mage and has blue power set powers and things like that. Whereas Zeth's powers may not really match a white or a white-black character very well. Like having power to fly works in white-black, so you could do that. So he would probably have some sort of thing like that. But there's also kind of a indestructibility, which also could work. Maybe some of the vampire designs recently would work for Zeth. I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
Simon Simon says, what would your advice be for someone who struggles to find out what they want to do with their future?
Yeah, this is rough because I'm in some ways the wrong person to ask, because I decided very early on what I wanted to do, and then I chased it and it worked out, right? There's a huge bout of I didn't have to go to college and say, what do I really want to do with my life? I knew. Now, what I had to do was, am I willing to try the thing that I want to do? Because everyone tells me it's a really bad idea to try becoming a writer. And should I do the normal / reasonable thing and pick a major that will actually have me earn money? So I had that whole thing, but I knew what I wanted to do. I remember a conversation with a friend of mine, Ben, who's in my writing group and has been for years, and he is not a writer. And we were chatting one time. This was when we were roommates, way back when. And he said something to the effect, I'm paraphrasing Ben, but something to the effect of, Brandon, I think you have it in your head that everyone out there has like some deep passion for something they want to do in life, and that they need to find it. And he's like, I don't think I have that. I think what I want is a job that I can do while I'm at work, and then I can go home and be done with my job, and it gives me money to spend on video games and to have a nice life with my family. Not everybody, he said, needs an all-consuming artistic passion that drives every aspect of their life and dominates it. And it was really useful for me to hear that, because I realized, yeah, I've been seeing the world through the eyes of someone that has one of these. It's okay if you don't, right? Not everybody does. And your passion may be for finding something that you enjoy while you're there, but that also lets you have lots of time to travel or play video games or other things like that, which is totally viable. And so, in some ways, I'm the wrong person to ask, because I stumbled on mine very early in my life and grabbed a hold of it and did not let go, and really incorporated it into my identity more and more each year until it was inseparable from my identity. But I do think trying a lot of different things, trying to find things where you enjoy the busy work, that's a big thing, I think. What taught me that I really should be a writer instead of a chemist, like I went to school freshman year in chemistry because my mom convinced me it was a smart idea, and it was, because if I had liked chemistry as much as writing, it probably would have been a better idea for me to go for chemistry, if you look at the statistics in the world. But I didn't. I was miserable. The busy work was not something I enjoyed. And imagining myself doing chemistry busy work every day for the rest of my life was just horrifying to me. And that's part of what taught me. If you find something you're like, wow, someone actually does this for their job, and I like it. I like the accomplishment it gives me. I like the sense of it. Like a lot of people, I think that comes from interacting with other people, the service that you do. Like I liked working at the hotel way more than I liked chemistry, because a hotel job was a service industry job where I could actually get the people the things they wanted, and I could make them happy, right? Like all they really needed was, to maybe change rooms because this one had a loud air conditioner, or they needed some extra towels, or things like this. I could do that, and it was actually really fulfilling. I could totally have seen myself, working at some resort somewhere, taking care of people and getting them the towels when they need them, because there's a certain level of fulfillment in just making sure that everyone else is having a good time. And I think that a lot of people have that. And if you have that, you don't necessarily need the burning passion to go become a novelist. There are a lot of service-oriented jobs where you can get a very fulfilling life helping people. So, I don't know. What do you think, Isaac?
Well, my first thought was kind of something we touched on, is that, throughout your life, how do you know what kind of food you like? You try a lot of different kinds of food, or what kind of ice cream you like. You try them. And I think going and trying a lot of things, saying, maybe that's something I might like. And that doesn't mean go get that job and do it, but look into it, research it. We have YouTube videos on just about everything.
Yeah.
It's like if you want to be a bird trainer, there's videos for that, right? The other thing is that I recall a story that a friend told me that wanted to be an animator. And he went through animation school, and he became an animator, and then he went back to school and somehow stumbled upon audio engineering, right? He took this class where he was helping the professor or something like that, and he discovered that this was his passion and that he loves audio equipment, and he started collecting old surround sound type things from the 70s, and this became his passion, is kind of how media is recorded, audio and visual, and now he does this for a living. And you just never know what path you might take where you find the thing that you love.
Right. And I would say on that, a lot of people mistake loving, experiencing something for wanting to create it. Now, oftentimes, the fact that you love something will make you a better creator, but the number of my friends I've known who have decided, I love video games, I'm going to go make them, and have discovered that making video games, the actual busy work of making video games is just counter to their enjoyment of the video game. Our friend Ben, who I mentioned earlier, he went and worked for a game company for a while.
Yeah, he worked with me.
He worked with you.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, he said, I have learned that even though I'm a good programmer, it ruins games for me to spend time programming them. It's drudgery that makes me hate this thing that I used to love. And he went off and got a job out of the game industry, which is, often those pay better. So it's smart for multiple reasons. It was good for him to try, but loving something doesn't necessarily mean that you need to turn it into your job. I experienced this like with Magic the Gathering, which we brought up. I once went to, back when they did, some of you will remember the old days when they did pre-releases as these giant things. There was like one pre-release in Utah. And you went and they had these giant draft flights of like 64 people with, like 4 or 5 rounds or whatever. And I went to one of those. It's the first like big tournament. It wasn't a true big tournament. It wasn't like a GP or something like that. But I went to it and I won. It was an all-day thing, and I was first in my flight. The first time I'd ever gone to one of these, right? And there was a part of me that's like, wow, if that's what you can do with no preparation, with no testing, none of these things. If you can walk away and you can win a 64-person flight, maybe you could do this. And then the other part of my brain said, no, you did that once, Brandon. You did that to writing. And you like the busy work of writing. You would hate the busy work of sitting and playing Magic the Gathering to test it. Because the fun of Magic for me is exploring a new set, and then I get bored of it pretty quickly. And so, fortunately, the wise part of my brain said, you're not doing that again. You did that once, bucko. Leave this as a hobby. And it is totally okay to find something that you are really passionate about, such as writing, and then look at what it would take to have a chance at going pro and say, you know what? I would rather do this as my hobby, love it, incorporate it into my personality, my being, right? But never have to worry if I'm going to be able to support a family on it. Like a good friend of mine, Alan, who's Leighton from both Professor Leighton from The Arithmetist and also Leighton from Bridge 4. He's gotten 2 cameos. He's a writer in our writing group. He's written 4 or 5 novels. He's never tried to publish them. He is a school teacher, high school math teacher. He's really good at high school math. He's really good with students. He loves being a teacher, but he loves also having writing as a hobby. And he writes a book it takes him like 3 or 4 years to finish one. And it's really fulfilling. He's a pretty darn good writer. He is not professional caliber. He could maybe get there, but the stress of trying to do that, just not worth it to him. And it's great to have him in the writing group and to see his books as they develop. So, wow, that's another long rant on a simple question that hopefully our life experience can help you find your way.
And, keeping it on the serious note, we have a question for Isaac. Does Odium wear underpants?
I guess that's a Laugh-O lift and find out.
I don't want to.
Such a dad joke there.
That's all right. We're both dads.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
There are multiple. In fact, there are 3 dads sitting right here. Can I tell you that I love when dad jokes became the way you referred to those words? That's one of those terms. Once in a while, the internet comes up with something that you're like, wow, that is just a perfect name for things, right?
Yeah.
And dad jokes is the perfect. In Korea, I think I've told you guys this before, maybe not. In Korea, they call them solong jokes. Solong means cold. Solong hada. Not so long. It's a false. It's not a cognate or anything like that. But they would, when I was there, the kids. I doubt they do it still. It was probably just the region I was in. Whenever you told a bad joke, they would make some sort of hand signal that was like penguins, because to make it cold, they'd go like this. Or my favorite was they're like, I'd tell a bad joke and the kid would go like this, and I'm like, what's that? And they're like, this penguin told a really cold joke, and these 4 are pecking it to death.
Wow.
And that is the favorite joke that any Korean ever told me.
That's cool.
That my joke was so cold that the penguins were pecking the other penguin to death. It was great. And dad joke works really well for that. So
With Odium, I bet you this is the big reason that Hoyt is upset with him.
The underpants.
the underpants question.
This, you're destroying the world. I had an idea for the Zeth card.
For the Zeth card?
He was talking about Zeth in Magic the Gathering.
Oh, right, yeah.
What if he takes you gather basically an army of 1/1s and he takes those and throws them.
Yeah.
You know?
He could be a sacrifice thing, and it does this.
Kind of to echo the lashing and throwing things at other people.
Yeah.
Random thing. You were talking about Magic.
Yeah.
I started thinking about Zeth.
You know, keeping in line with the serious questions, Izumi says if the Mistborn trilogy was a 90s TV show, which song would be the main theme for it?
Oh my goodness, 90s even. That's a hard question. I would have to think about that. Even though it's silly, I'd have to think about it.
Is there one about going into the night?
I wear my sunglasses at night. That's 80s though.
It's 80s.
Uh-huh.
All I can think of is Smells Like Teen Spirit, and that doesn't work.
No. Black Hole Sun, that's 90s. They've got a dark sun.
Black Hole Sun works.
It's
a great one too.
It's a really good song. I think that's 90s, right? That is Audio
90s.
Slave.
That's Soundgarden.
Soundgarden. That's Soundgarden. Okay.
Is there a good early Weezer song? I mean, if it's a sitcom, Weezer.
Yeah, that's true. It's got to be
sitcom.
sitcom.
Really
Weezer would work a lot better.
I don't know if I would pick I guess.
Isn't that what it said? 90s sitcom?
Yeah.
Like if
Or
it were
they said
90s
90s TV show.
Yeah,
TV show.
If it's like Full House or something like that, then, boy, are you trying to insult Weezer? Is that what you're trying to do
No,
here?
I love Weezer.
This what we're...
I love Weezer. It's just that a lot of their stuff is kind of lighthearted, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, they eventually took Cake songs and
Yes,
and
they did.
We should get
used
Weird
those
Al
as-
to do something for
Yeah,
our 90s
Weird Al.
Mistborn. He's been around since 79.
I would
Yes.
love if Weird Al was a fan of the books. That would be great.
So Weird Al, if you're in the chat, go ahead and let us know.
That's another one of my childhood heroes that I haven't met.
I hear nothing but good things about him.
Makes such great music.
Yeah.
Around here, his last album, we still sing Tacky all the time. Just for whatever reason, that one stuck with us. But also the sports song, because Emily and I were both in a marching band. It's a marching band style song. That one comes on when it's time to like clean the house sometimes. It's a great song.
Another question for Isaac. They want to know if you're going to be doing another Cosmere Inktober this year.
I don't know yet. Haven't decided. It took a lot of work to do that on top of everything else last year. And we'll have to talk about it and see. Also coming up with the prompts is kind of, they're very specific, right? If we do something too generic, people are like, well, this isn't Cosmere Inktober. That could just be the normal Inktober prompts. If we go too specific, it's like shattered, right? We used that as one of the words, and that it's hard to not repeat ourselves.
You could always sign that to Ben and be like, "Hey Ben, take an hour each day of your salaried work for us. Post a thing and then draw it for the fans."
Yeah,
that would be fun.
That would be a great idea. I know Ben's watching. Hey
He
Ben,
is. Yep.
let's talk about this next time we chat.
Casey from Facebook wants to know if you've ever met or maybe discovered a celebrity fan that surprised you.
It just happens kind of randomly. Like, you never know who among celebrities, like, epic fantasy is cool, but it's also a kind of niche genre, right? So you never know what's going to happen. Like, I was on tour in Scotland, and the publicist said, "Hey, it wasn't the publicist, it was the bookseller said, hey, there's somebody here waiting for you outside." And it turns out that the guitarist from Creed was on tour with his new band then, and had a gig and had some Wheel of Time books with him. And he's like, "Oh, Brandon's in town." And he's like, "Can I get these signed?" They called the bookstore before because I have to go play. And so, like, he showed up. It's always been cool seeing, like, the big show when he's tweeted about the books and stuff. He seems like a really fun guy. I never got to meet him. He offered me tickets to events and things, and I never managed to make it. But he sounds really fun. Of course, when Henry Cavill tweeted the books, my phone exploded from people texting me. Do you know what just happened? I've really enjoyed his saga of building a PC. If you guys haven't seen it, he built a PC, and there was a great Reddit meme today or yesterday that was because The Rock has a new baby. And they're like celebrities with their children, and they're like cradling their newborns, and then there's Henry there with his PC as he's putting it together. It was a really cool picture. But I wouldn't say any surprised me, right?
So expected. Wow, that's even better. I'm just
yeah. No, it doesn't surprise me because I feel like we spend one of the things I spent too much time doing, and I think that a lot of people spent too much time doing when I was in high school, was trying to put people into boxes and by what their interests could be, right? You like this interest, therefore you are in this box and must like these other things as well. And one of the great liberating things was getting to college and having spent all this time being indoctrinated with people who like sports don't like fantasy nerds, and fantasy nerds don't like sports, which is like a stupid false dichotomy, and making friends with some people who are really into sports and realizing how nerdy they were for their sports statistics, and how similar that was to my nerdiness over fantasy books, and how complementary our nerdiness was. And then meeting people who just completely bucked that trend, that ignored the boxes and no, I really like fantasy novels and I like sports. And so I think that that college experience taught me to stop being so gatekeepery on what people can like, right? And one thing, it's totally natural. We want to find our tribe, and finding our tribe and having a place in it is really good. It's a good feeling. But when my sister Jane, who is a very trendy woman, shall we say, and things goes to my signings. There are times she's gone to my signings, and then people are like, "What are you doing here? You're not,
You're
Cupcake
lost.
Wars is around the corner or something." And she's like, "He's my brother." And I'm in the books, and stuff like that. I understand finding your tribe, but I think that exclusiveness is very damaging to all of our psyches. And assuming that somebody doesn't like fantasy novels because they are a ginormous buff superstar or a wrestler, I think is a little small-minded of us, even though we all fall into this trap sometimes. So.
And that's 9.
Okay. Well, I have time because I'm going to finish this stack.
Okay.
I probably have time for one more question.
Let's get one more.
Yeah.
So let's see. Sorry, I wasn't prepared for that.
No,
I have
all right.
I have a bunch. I'm just looking for a good final question.
No, I can talk on that topic a little bit more.
Yeah.
I wish we were less. I wish we were less prone to make fun of other people's interests also, right? I have consciously tried to stop making certain demographic groups punchlines to jokes. The common one is people will make fun of furries or whatnot, right, in the community. And that just comes out of people are making fun of me. Who can I find that is a group that I can safely make fun of that won't be able to fight back, I feel, is what we do too often. And in the community, we will often be like, I'm a true fan of this because I like this thing, and we will judge each other's tastes a lot. And it's tough because it is totally valid to review something and to say, I did not like this thing, and here are the reasons. You read Twilight and be like, I did not like this. These are the reasons. That's not invalid. That's contributing to the discussion and the conversation. I hate how often we take the next step, and I include myself in this, and say, therefore, anyone who likes Twilight must have terrible taste. And I don't think that's a step we need to take. I finished this. we will be back next week. Next week we will have cool things because we're going to announce our last stretch goals next week. We're going to do like one last push for the last week. And so we should have some really cool stretch goals. Yeah. We've been planning for our last 2 stretch goals that we'll probably announce next week.
Ben's working on one as we speak.
Yep. And it's my favorite, other than the Witcoin, of all the things we've come up with. And I got to come up with all the jokes with it. And so I think you guys will really like these. And so we'll talk about those next week. And then we'll do one final push. And then we'll start ordering stuff. Then once we know how much we need to buy. Mm-hmm. So thank you guys all for supporting the Kickstarter, for hanging out and throwing questions at me while I sign random stuff. Thanks, Isaac, for story time.
Always happy to come with a story.
We'll see you guys all next week. I'll let you know what happened when my mom saw my facial adornments.